Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Creatives. I say good morning because I'm here in the UK, but good afternoon or good evening if you're anywhere else in the world. I'm Melanie Perry.
And I'm Julie Hyde-Mune.
And this is On the Couch with Creatives. Fans and followers of the show will know by now that we're part of the Creatives Group, the private network for creative professionals everywhere. Together, we help to connect you with like-minded individuals, help you create at your best, and therefore help you to grow and develop your creative business. If that sounds like a good idea to you and you'd like to find out more, please don't hesitate to contact us after the show. We would love to speak to you. But this is On the Couch. So, Julie, who do we have on the couch today?
Well, today we are chatting on the couch with Desaray Mnyandu. Desaray is an author, an artist, and a businesswoman, and she has a very interesting life story. She was born in Turkey, and she's now living in the USA. And her books are aimed at introducing children of the African diaspora to connect and gain cultural competence at an early age. So let's get her on the couch and hear all about it. Hello, Desaray, all the way from Washington, D.C. Welcome to On the Couch with Creative.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, you're a very interesting lady, So as soon as I saw your children's book on social media, it's so beautiful. And then I started reading up about you, and I thought, wow, this is somebody we need to talk to, because there's so much more than being a children's author, an author, whatever. There's so much more going on in what you're doing. So describe to us exactly what your aim, your purpose in life is. Who are you and what are you doing?
In life? Oh, well, okay. First and foremost, to teach my children. I am a mother of 4, so top of my list in all things is to reach my 4 kids. And once I learned the things that they really need and are excited about, and the things that are helping them to become their own people, I decided I wanted to share that with other children as well and help other parents to reach their kids. And so it just kind of became more of my mission, is to reach children. And it just kind of spiraled from there. All the things that I do, my art, my writing, I homeschool. So my children kind of envelop everything that I do. And now it's become bigger and it envelops other people's children as well. I'm an American. My parents are Americans. My grandparents are Americans. I married a South African man, and we met in college. And he loves his country, loves his culture, loves his people. And that just kind of like crept in with the other things that I was teaching the kids. So those things kind of melded.
Well, I find it very interesting, Desaray, that you said you homeschool. I only have one child, and I had to homeschool over lockdown, and it nearly killed me. Seriously, I would never, ever, ever do it again. Ever.
Yeah. It is a lot. It is not for the faint of heart. It takes a special kind of patience that I think I'm still trying to acquire at this moment. So for anybody who says that they're not going to do it or they can't do it, I completely understand.
Yeah, I can't.
How do you teach your children, and obviously other people's children within the African diaspora, how do you teach them Zulu? You're writing about Zulu culture, Zulu traditions, Zulu folk tales, Zulu proverbs, Zulu sayings, but you yourself are not Zulu. So did you learn the language from your husband? How did you manage to sort of seep the Zulu culture into your life?
Yeah. So when we were first dating, I was very interested in all of the cultural aspects, the language of my husband. And funny enough, he was like, oh, one day you'll learn those things. He wasn't quite into teaching me those things, but now he's a professor of Zulu. It's ironic. But I kind of sought those things out myself. I was like, I really want to know about this guy and his culture and his language. So I found different things online, sources that I could buy books from. And so I got a very basic level understanding of Zulu. And that's really all you need to teach kids, because once they kind of learn the rules, they hear their father speaking, they hear their uncle speaking, they talk to other family members, and they kind of apply them. I would even dare to say that they probably surpassed me at this point. So I've created workbooks for them, coloring pages, the same way you would teach them any sort of other subject, by involving all of their senses. That's a good way to get them to learn languages too.
Do you visit the Zulu family in South Africa?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So one of my, I guess, core needs was, before we decided to get married, I said, I have to go visit your family first. And I was amazed. It was so beautiful. One of the biggest things that stood out to me was, this place is so green and beautiful. When I went out into some more rural areas, it was wonderful. And I was like, okay, I think I could marry this guy.
And the culture is so rich and colorful. And they have exquisite manners. They are such beautiful people, and with the greatest sense of humor. I must say, out of everybody that I've met in all the travels around the world, I would say the Zulu people have got the greatest sense of humor I've ever come across. Oh yes. I had to adjust my mind a bit, because I wasn't quite understanding. I was like, are we, oh, this is a joke. Oh, okay. But once I was staying there for a little while, I just got into it. It was wonderful. I stayed with people I didn't know. They didn't know me. They weren't even family members. People would just be like, oh, hey, what are you doing? And if there's something in common, they would say, you want to come by my house and we can have lunch? And I would say, sure. It was a wonderful experience. Well, to be fair, South Africans across the board, because there's so many colors and races and classes and different cultures in South Africa. But across the board, South Africans are very hospitable. But can you speak conversational Zulu? You can actually communicate with your husband's family. I can understand what they're saying just enough to make sure that that the kids aren't saying anything they're not supposed to. And I can say enough just to make sure that I can talk above the children's head as well when we need to hide something. But that's about it. I took Melanie and her husband to South Africa one year, and we traveled around. We didn't make it to Zululand, to KwaZulu-Natal. So she never saw it. But what she did see of South Africa, she absolutely loved, didn't you, Melanie?
Yeah, like a lot of people that I've spoken to who have been to South Africa or Africa, say that they left part of my soul in Africa because it's so big. It's so big. You feel very. It's very humbling to be out in the bush. Oh, yes. Oh, I was out in the dark when we arrived at nighttime, and I was like, I've never seen this level of dark before. I was waving my hand in front of my face, and I was like, this is a whole other world right now. But when you get out there, it's like you're in a different place. Yeah, a completely other world than here in DC. Let's talk about your business. It's a publishing company, is it? Zulunomics? Yes. So my husband and I started it, and we kind of along the same lines of me and my children
and reaching other children. He is more on the college level. So right now he teaches at Howard University and he teaches Zulu there. And a lot of his experience with students, college students, and parents that wanted their college level students to learn Zulu kind of melded with my experience with parents wanting their children to learn Zulu, and those were elementary students. So we kind of created this Zulunomics to address the concerns of both sides. And as time went on, we're kind of growing to address people who want to learn Zulu language and culture who aren't students at all, who aren't children, just adults who are just traveling to South Africa. So that means that we have now flashcards and posters, workbooks, all of those things, mainly for kids and students, but now we're expanding a bit, and it's been fun.
Before we get into the children's books, because your children's book is just beautiful, you have published something called 99 Zulu Proverbs and Sayings. Now, obviously, you must have lent a lot on your husband to find those proverbs and sayings, or did he help you? Is he also a co-author of the book?
He is a co-author, and I would say that although the translation part is definitely all him, I didn't know the translation of these things, the proverbs at all. I actually started writing down things that he was saying that didn't make any sense to me.
You mean say it in English? You say it in English, and then obviously it's a Zulu saying that makes no sense in English.
Exactly. Okay. So he would say something like, "No frog jumps for another frog," and I would say, "Okay, sure," and I would write that down. "No elephant finds its trunk too heavy." I would write that down.
That's a beautiful saying.
Right?
Wow.
It's wonderful. I don't think he realized how integrated these sayings were into his everyday vocabulary, because I would mention what he would say and he would say, "Oh yeah, that, you know what that means. It means this and this." But it wasn't a big deal for him, but it was so beautiful to me, and I had to write them down. I didn't write them with the intention of writing a book, but I don't actually really know what my intention was. I just thought it would be nice to have them. And soon after maybe a year of just randomly writing these things, I had over 100 different sayings that he would just blurt out, at different times. And I said, you know what, we should translate these and we should adapt them so that people could understand what they mean. And he was like, okay, actually, that sounds like a good idea. And so the book was born, and people have really found it interesting and helpful, because it not only just translates, but it interprets as well.
But why 99? Why not 120?
I think the human brain is kind of adapted to make everything even and go by tens or by fives or something like that. And I think in my head, I thought it would stand out. It would look a little weird if it said 99 instead of 100. It would make people look twice.
Wow.
That was the
marketing ploy as well, because if things seem a little bit less than something, it gets people to buy $9.99.
Exactly. When you
99p.
Exactly. And that's what I was hoping. I don't know if that was accomplished, but I was definitely going for something that would make someone say, "Hey, why is that 99 versus 100?"
Let's talk about isiZulu letters and blends. Now, is this more on the children's level or on the level of adults learning Zulu for the first time?
Well, I think that's the good thing about that book. It's made for children, but I believe that adults learning Zulu for the first time, if they pick up that book, it would really help them with pronunciation. So in English, there are sounds, or in Zulu, there are sounds that you won't find in the English language. And a lot of people, especially without the audio, kind of have trouble understanding what these letters are supposed to sound like, or these blends of letters are supposed to sound like. So those blends and letters also have at the bottom of the page what it's supposed to sound like as it comes out of your mouth. And so if you are just traveling and you want to work on your Zulu, that's a great way to do it without having the constraints of saying, I need internet so I can listen to the audio. And then, of course, like I said, it was made for children. So I think that's the great thing about the Letters and Blends book.
Because a lot of people coming to South Africa, when they go and visit Phiwokuhle Game Reserve.
Oh, yes.
If you say Phiwokuhle, they don't know what you're talking about, because the way it's written, H-L-U, and then the U-H-L-E, how on earth do you actually pronounce that in English? Like, how do you pronounce it?
Exactly. So my parents, like I said, I'm an American. My parents, being an American, they are very into wanting their grandchildren to learn their Zulu language from their father's side, and so they try to encourage. And so my mother especially is like, how do you say it? So I actually gave her the Letters and Blends book, and we work with her. And so when we're doing the HL, I'm always like, put your tongue at the back of your teeth, at the front, and blow, and then. So that's the best way I can teach her. And so actually by teaching her and teaching my children, that's kind of how the Letters and Blends book grew or became, because I had to teach, and the strategies that I used, or the comparisons that I used with them, I know they were successful. So I had to put them in a book, so hopefully somebody else would find them helpful.
So now talk about your children's books. Let's talk about that.
Let's. So I started off with Mbila's Tale, very similar to the story of how I started with 99 Proverbs. I would hear my husband speaking about some stories that he heard when he was growing up. And I was like, wow, that's beautiful. Where is that? Where can we get that story? Because I want those books on my children's shelves. I want that to be a part of their collection, something that they can choose from. And he was like, oh, they're not written down. And I was kind of confused. What do you mean they're not written down? These are stories that you're saying that you know, and your brother knows, and your neighbors and your cousins would all know, but they're not written anywhere. Oh, no, of course not. So I kind of made it a bit of a mission to incorporate these stories written down somewhere and publish them for my children and for other people's children that have grown up with those stories, have that nostalgia. And so Mbila's Tale is a story about a little animal. I guess it's called a dasi or a hyrax in Zulu. It would be called an Mbila. And it doesn't have a tail. And it's the story of why he does not have a tail. He's a little lazy. And the kids really did enjoy it. The fun thing about that particular book is it's a flip book. So on one side, it's in Zulu. The other side is in English. It can be used as a teaching tool for learning isiZulu, as well as just reading for fun.
The African stories are wonderful. Obviously, there's an oral tradition in African tribes. And if you go back, I mean, even today, you sit around the fire and grandma and grandpa tell you the stories and why how the cheetah got its spots, and why the elephant, how it got its long nose. And then stunning stories, lovely stories. But for children of the African diaspora like yours, they don't have that every day. They're not sitting around a fire with grandpa and grandma and listening to stories that their grandpas and their grandmas told them. So to have that on your children's bookshelf is such a wonderful idea. Really, it is.
Thank you. Yes, that's completely the idea. They're not interacting with their South African side of the family all the time. They're hearing mainly English, and the hope is for us to one day move back to South Africa. And I would hate for them to feel completely lost in a place where we want to call home. And those books, those stories create pieces of home that they can have here. And hopefully, when that does happen, that move does eventually happen, they'll feel a little bit more comfortable. They'll feel a little bit more integrated, and they'll understand a little bit more because of these books.
Yeah, the culture shock is great. My parents, my father was English, my mother Welsh, but they met and married in South Africa, and I was born and brought up in South Africa. And when I married my husband and came over to the UK, I thought, it would be easy because, my father was English, my mother was Welsh. Even for me, I had such a culture shock. So even for your children, knowing the language and knowing the proverbs and the sayings and the stories, it's still going to be a culture shock. Going from Washington, D.C. to a kraal in the middle of KwaZulu-Natal, still a culture shock.
It's going to be a huge culture shock. Well, I'll be going through it with them. I mean, when I went to South Africa, it was for a month, but I've only ever lived here. I've lived in Turkey for a few years. I was born there, traveling, going to the UK, going throughout the Caribbean. It's just not the same as living in one spot. So that's the good thing, is that we'll be going through it together.
Nice.
I think you're doing the right thing and preparing the road, so to speak. But rather that than going and have a complete change, at least they'll have some familiarity with the traditions and the language, as you say.
That's my hope. I'm doing the best I can with what I have here. So hopefully it will make the road a bit easier for them.
I'm sure it will.
I get a feeling, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, that the African American or Black Americans who have obviously been descended from the slaves from Africa, that the disconnect between them and Africa is so great. And that there's this yearning to actually find their roots, find the Africanness in them. And somebody like you, I don't know your family background, but the fact that you married a Zulu man, an African who speaks an African language, comes from an African country, that must bring so much richness, I would assume, and cultural identity into your family as American.
I would say, I think in general, yes, African Americans really do want to connect with something deeper and don't want our story or our history to stop at slavery. And so a big issue that people find is trying to close that gap in between wherever their ancestors were and slavery, finding that space, and who were those people that were brought on ships, who were those people that didn't have names, that were just counted as numbers, that were almost like cattle. And I think finding an identity in Africa, wherever it is important to a lot of people, because that almost, not erases, but that almost starts to heal that part of history, that creates a bridge over that part of history where we know there was more to us before slavery. And I think personally, I don't think I had it initially that I was like, I need to go to Africa. But I think once I did go visit, I was like, I think this is something that I need to explore, something that I would like to know more about. It wasn't something that I knew that I needed until I actually had it, which it worked out wonderfully for me, that I met Phiwo, and that we got married. And my family just has so many questions for him about the continent, about his growing up. And I think it does help them a lot. And I think mostly it helps his students. Yeah. They ask him so many questions. The American students here, Black Americans, they want to know all about it. And that actually is why he's started doing South African visits with the college students in his class.
I think that's absolutely marvelous. As you say, a lot of this, though, revolves around your husband and his culture. Have you ever traced your roots, your African roots, and know where your family comes from, and traced any family history on your side?
That's a great question. There's like I mentioned before, the gap. I did do, I think it's ancestry.com, and you spit in this little tube and they give you this whole map of where you could be from, or where your ancestors were most likely from. And so that was great and very helpful. They say, okay, a little bit of Congo, a little bit of Nigeria, and a little bit of, I think, Senegalese or something like that. And that's what makes up me. And that was great. It was actually really what we kind of anticipated it would be. But I've been trying to, instead of just saying where those people, my ancestors, would have been from, I want to put names, and I want to put tribal associations and stuff like that. And that's been very difficult, especially when you consider a person not a person and you don't name them. You all that's in records is that there was a female, and she's about 23 years old, and this is where we sold her. So it makes it's very sad. It's very difficult to do. It's a very arduous process. So I've gotten through portions of it.
Yeah,
it is sad because woman number 6, or teenager number 16. How on earth do you trace that? There's no name. Because a lot of the tribes in that Western and Central African area, where obviously most of the slaves, the transatlantic slaves, came from, there are just so many tribes. They're so different in themselves.
Yeah.
So just to be called number 6, or lot 7, January lot 7, as you say, they were regarded as cattle. So how difficult?
It's quite a difficult process. Yeah.
And I imagine, say, from that, I don't know, from a number before that, there wouldn't be anything, because the African slavers who shipped these, they didn't, that sounds awful to say, they didn't really care. It was just, we're shipping these people. They wouldn't have kept records themselves, because they were not, how can we say, any better than they should be, so to speak. And all these people that got shipped off, a bit like with the Irish, sort of similar thing. And it must be, it's kind of heartbreaking to think that your ancestor stops at a number, or there's nothing, you can't, it would be very difficult, to go back before. But with, it's interesting, so with ancestry.com, my sister-in-law did it, and she's got bits of Scandinavian and God knows whatever. And I thought, what, if we all did these things, we would all find that we're a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of the other. And I think that's a big argument for world peace, to be quite honest, because actually none of us are pure A, B, or C. We're all a mesh. We've all been melded together over the years for so long.
Yeah.
Put in the terms of Harry Potter, there's no pure blood anymore anywhere.
They are.
It'd be hard pushed.
Amazon tribes and that Indian tribe on that island in India, and the purest blood. Oh God, I don't want to sound weird like this, but the Welsh have very little. Welsh. Yeah, the Welsh. They're their bloodline, the Celtic bloodline, goes back.
Yeah, but if you went into Wales now, Julie, seriously.
Oh, no. Well, yeah, but I think
like people that are alive today, and even back in Britain, you would not find, I guarantee you would not find anywhere anybody with that pure Anglo-Saxon, that we've been conquered by the Vikings, we've been conquered by the Romans, we've been conquered by God knows whatever. It's like we're all a part of each other in this world now, pretty much. So it's about time we just stop fighting each other and just embraced each other, because actually we're all relatives under the skin anyway. So I think we should just all world peace, thank you, because actually we're all each other's brothers and sisters now. We are. My
mother told me when I was very young and growing up in apartheid South Africa, so it was difficult to marry what I was hearing from my parents and what I was seeing out in the world. But she once said to me, one day we'll all be a lovely coffee colour. And it's feasible. But all coffee colored, but with different cultural traditions. And if there's one thing that's going to happen in your family, Desaray Mnyandu, is that you are going to hold on tight to your Zulu traditions, your Zulu culture.
And I think it's important for you. And do you find, Syria, as well, that it becomes more important, these things become more important when you become a parent?
Oh, for sure.
Because you want your heritage and your roots and to have that, you don't want to lose it, because once it's gone, it's gone. If we don't pass it down, we don't pass the history.
Well, I feel a great, and I say this like a great weight on me in particular, because a lot of these things especially come from the mother, with me being the homeschooler, with me being the person with them about 99% of the time, that responsibility of letting them know of their heritage, the languages that they should know, there's the spiritual aspects of them becoming good human beings and good grown-ups in the world. That's really all on me. That's a lot of my responsibility. So yeah, I definitely see that became a lot more important, after I became a parent.
And do you have plans for more children's books?
Absolutely. Completely. So we have a new book, Cindy, that should be coming out, and it's a Zulu Cinderella. My daughter was reading a book. There's so many parodies and different versions of Cinderella. So she was reading one of those, and she thought out loud, Mom, I don't know why there's not a Zulu Cinderella. And I said, that's a really good idea. Maybe we should make that a part of our homeschool. Maybe you should kind of write a paper about Zulu Cinderella. And the more we talked about it, I thought, this actually might be a really good book. This could work. In the States, I'm not sure in the UK, but fairy tales are a big part of the public school curriculum. And even private schools do use it quite often. And they use different cultural versions of Cinderella and Red Riding Hood. And it's actually a big business. So I was like, this could really work. And we started writing, and we started connecting with people that said, wow, that would be really cool. And it's been about a year and a half now, and it's finally happening. We've got illustrations done by our wonderful illustrator, Shayna. And she's in South Africa, actually. And now the formatting is done. Now we are just waiting for the prints. And I'm super excited for this book to launch. And I'm really excited for my daughter to see her idea come together. And I'm like, you're going to be an author, baby.
Oh, I love that. That's absolutely brilliant. And again, talking about the Zulu heritage, Julie's going to take a breath now, because I'm about to get on my soapbox just for 5 minutes. But because we talk about a lot, being in film and production, and coming from a Disney background.
Oh, okay.
The one thing that really irritates me about Disney is when they rehash kind of classics and just put diverse people in, and it's the same old, same old. And I said to Julie before, and I said, Julie, maybe Julie and you can collaborate on something. But I said, there are so many rich stories from African history. Certainly, there are, many male heroes. There are female heroes. If you dig into it, there are so many. I mean, you've done a story about Cinderella, which is lovely. But there are people within the historical culture that if you dig and talk to the old people and find out the story, Disney could make some epic, either cartoons or live action, with great diverse cast and crew that are real, proper African stories that need to be told. And there's so many wonderful stories that should be told. And I would rather hear those than just another remake of Snow White. Well, I've done Snow White, liked it the first time, that'll do, thanks. I don't need 50 million times. Or another one that Julie and I get on our soapbox about is like the remake of The Lord of the Rings. I don't want to see The Lord of the Rings hash 120,000. Give me something new that is going to educate and enthrall a new generation.
I hear you.
I would love that.
It's like saying they're going to remake The Sound of Music. Are you crazy? There's only ever going to be one, and every generation will love it. You don't have to remake it, but some stories can be retold and retold differently.
Yeah.
So the idea of an African Cinderella story, the story of Shaka Zulu, King Shaka's mother. Well, she was a bit of a Cinderella, but that didn't happen. She married the prince. She was shunned, and he was basically a bastard, and he was shunned, and all that anger.
Give it to Disney and they'll Disneyfy it and they'll all live happily ever after.
Can you imagine Disney getting hold of Shaka Zulu's story and making it? You could have this African warrior sing in the rolling hills of KwaZulu-Natal about how wonderful it is to be a king. Oh no, I don't think Disney could touch that.
Boy. Yeah.
But really, they need to. I mean, quite a few films have been made about him, but there needs to be an epic film about him. Epic. He was the African Napoleon. He was an amazing. Anyway, we could carry on talking about this forever and a day. Let's talk about your top tips now. You're an author, obviously an artistic person. And you're a businesswoman. You started your own publishing company. And what top tips would you give to people wanting to become a children's author, wanting to become a children's publisher, wanting to touch with another culture or their husband's culture or their wife's culture or their grandparents' culture and wanting to put it out into the world? What 3 top tips do you have?
Okay, so the first one is to incorporate your own story. I think that people might find their own story maybe mundane or pedestrian and not interesting, but what you might find normal or not exciting, somebody might find inspirational. And so incorporating parts of you into your story not only gives it authenticity, but it helps people relate because now they're like, oh, that's possible. Even if it's a fairy tale or a fiction story, pieces of you in there can really ignite somebody's hope or inspire children, because when you're talking about your book or when they're reading about it and how it came to be, they can say, wow, that was actually real. That actually happened. And I think that's important to have a part of you in your own story. And the second one would be to have patience. Children's books are not for people who want like instant, right now publishing. If you are making a children's book, especially a picture book, we're talking about illustrations. We're talking about word count limits. We're talking about making sure the vocabulary is on par with the students or the children that you're trying to have the book marketed to. You have to make sure that you're working well with your illustrator and that those illustrations are taking the manuscript and elevating it. There's so many different moving parts, and a lot of time it's going to take a while. So if you're interested in getting something done very quickly, a children's book might not be the way you want to go. And then the last thing, what was that? I think I wrote it down somewhere. Oh, marketing. It is now everyone's concern. It is not just if you are getting traditionally published, you still need to think about marketing. If you are self-publishing, you definitely must think about marketing, and not just for sales, but how you want to write the story. There are some things that you can put in the story that might be more authentic to you, and that's okay because you are only marketing to a certain demographic. But if you are trying to market to a wide, diverse population and you're trying to make lots of money, then there'll be certain things that you can't put in your story. And you think about those things at the beginning, so that way you're not making big changes later on and costing yourself time. And that's especially true if you are a self-publisher. If you are going traditionally published, they will definitely tell you, nope, can't put that, can't put that. But either way, they're going to ask you to be a part of their marketing team. And if you're self-publishing, you are the marketing team. So those are my top 3: marketing, patience, and authenticity.
Brilliant. I love that. I love that. And look forward to your the Zulu Cinderella as well, because I think it is a lovely, lovely idea. As you say, some stories are just evergreen, and but I do hope we do see more from you, more stories too, traditional stories. I would love that too. Okay, now this is our on the couch part of On the Couch, Desaray. We're going to sneak into that psyche of yours and get to know you a little bit better. Okay. My cards, my beautiful cards.
Okay.
I'm going to run my finger along the cards and just say stop when you want me to pick a card.
Stop.
The big one sticking out the top. Okay. What have we picked? So we're going to ask you creatively about the value on the card. So let's have a look. What did you? You picked recognition. The value of recognition. So we're going to ask you creatively about recognition. What, Desaray, does recognition mean to you? What does it look, feel, and sound like?
Oh, okay. Recognition to me would be nostalgia. So recognizing if you go into a store and you see something that looks like your grandmother's vase, and it's just, oh, wow. So it feels like warmth, and it sounds like a song that you've heard before. Yeah, it touches your heart because it's something that you've known before. That's how it resonates with me.
Something you recognize, something you remember, something that is a part of yourself.
Exactly. Which is actually a big part of my books. One of the things that I wanted to do with the Cinderella thing. I wanted people to say, oh, Cinderella, I know it. And then to also see parts of their culture. So for the people who are buying in South Africa, for them, to Zulu people to say, oh, wow, yeah, I know this part of the story, or I know this part of the story. And for the people here in the States to say, oh, Cinderella, I love that story. So, to recognize, to look at something and feel that instant nostalgia.
So your Cinderella could actually cross cultural divides purely because so many people of various cultures and colors would recognize Cinderella, the story of.
Yes,
we all have that in our cultures in some way.
Oh, yes.
It's been absolutely wonderful meeting you, Desaray, and it's been wonderful talking to you. And I hope you will keep in touch with creators, because the things that you are doing are just absolutely wonderful. I mean, that's why I contacted you in the first place, because what you were doing just resonated with me. And we wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Oh, thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Julie, for having me. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate the time on the couch.
Oh, it's been so lovely having us. So some guests we just could talk to all day. You're one of those wonderful. We could talk all day in a series. An hour's not enough. But we run out of time, and I have to say goodbye. And I'm like, I don't want to say goodbye. What? I just say thank you to Julie for joining me on the couch, and thank you so much, Desaray, and thank you so much to our wonderful audience for watching our episode today as well. But until next time, we'll see you